To be respectful of the schedule and everyone's time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Amy Owen, and I'm one of the financial aid counselors here at Baylor. Both of my degrees are from Baylor. I've actually lived in Waco all my life, so go Baylor, go Waco. And just to let you know, this presentation is in your event app. So if you just do the search phrase financial matters, that should pull up for you. So you're still welcome to take screenshots, things like that, but just know the presentation will be available for you. Another thing, we will be available after the presentation to take questions. So if you'll just kind of watch and listen throughout that, and then seek one of us out at the end. We'll try our best to answer your questions. So to get us started, just to give you a brief overview of what Student Financial Services encompasses, that's three main areas. One is financial aid, and that's the program that primarily deals with your scholarships, grants, loans, the aid for your studies. Then student accounts, they deal with the billing, your e-bill, charges, fees, pretty much anything related to that is where you would go to. And then One Stop is a great department we have. It kind of goes between those two. It deals with financial aid items as well as student accounts, billing items. So that's always a great resource to use as well. With our presentation and with financial aid, we're going to review what all should have been completed or will need to be completed, what your financial aid offer may encompass, looking at direct loans, scholarship searches, alternative loans, and then even the federal work-study program. Then a name you're going to hear often throughout this presentation is Bear Web. It's very important for your student, if they have not done so already, to get accustomed to checking Bear Web and looking at that frequently. That is the primary way that financial aid communicates with students, and so that's really the first place they want to look and check on things. Whether it's requirements, billing, or award offers, Bear Web is where you need to go. And then looking how to plan ahead, not just for coming in as a freshman, but your remaining time at Baylor. And then other important dates and things to keep in mind. So hopefully what should have been completed by this point are the two aid applications, the FAFSA and the CSS. The FAFSA is the one through the Department of Ed that looks at your federal aid eligibility, and it needs to be completed each year your student is seeking that aid eligibility. The CSS profile is just a one-time application. So as you're coming in, whether it's as a freshman or a transfer student, you're going to complete it that one time, but the FAFSA would need to be renewed each year. With those two items, because our processing team will review and compare them, they may come across items that need to be verified or perhaps conflicting information that needs to be resolved. Once again, if you go to Bear Web, that's where you'll get notice of those types of items to take care of. Your award package, that should have already been made available in your Bear Web account. You would access that to see what aid has been provided to you at this point. And that's perhaps if you had direct loans offered, whether it was subsidized or unsubsidized, that's where you would accept those if they're still in the offered status and that's something you want to pursue. You'd also want to continue looking at additional scholarship opportunities. At this point in time, your main focus would be outside scholarships. So that's something we encourage you to always have as a work in progress. It could be a little defeating at times, filling out multiple applications and perhaps not getting a response or what you were hoping, but it literally can pay off in the end. So just keep it up, keep applying for those outside awards. And then also looking at alternative loans. If that's something that you're perhaps going to need to pursue, now is definitely the time to do that. We usually recommend for the fall that you would pursue those by early June, but now that we're into July, if you're going to need to go that route, go ahead and get that started. So looking at your aid, you're going to see two types of aid generally, and those are federal aid and then Baylor aid. The federal aid will cover items such as grants, federal work study, and then the federal loans. So with the federal work study, something to keep in mind is that is just going to show up as an eligibility if you see that. With that eligibility, if accepted, you would then use that link for student employment, and that's where you would pursue jobs on campus. With the federal loans, you're going to typically see subsidized and unsubsidized. Now, not every student will have both offered. Those are need-based, so depending on your financial needs that were demonstrated on the FAFSA, you would have one or both of those offered. With those, when you see them in the offered status, you would then need to, if you accept, go to a separate website, which is listed down there, studentaid.gov, and complete two items: the entrance counseling and the master promissory note. Those are just something the Department of Ed needs you to complete. Once you complete those, that will allow the loans to finish processing with Baylor. So it's very important if your student accepted them, but you're not seeing them show up on the bill yet. It could also be a timing issue if you just accepted them. But that would be another thing to double check, were the entrance counseling and master promissory note completed. Then with the PLUS loan, something to keep in mind with that, it's part of that direct loan family with the federal loans, but unlike the subsidized and unsubsidized, it is not offered. It's one that a parent would have to pursue and apply for. Now, it can also kind of be a little confusing, because then in the award offer, it may show up as accepted. And so sometimes parents may think, I didn't accept it. Actually, when you pursued that loan and completed that application, that was part of that acceptance process. So just keep that in mind if you did pursue the PLUS and it shows up like that. With the Baylor aid, you've got academic scholarships, need-based grants, and then specialty or departmental awards. With academic scholarships, those are offered through the admissions department. Oddly enough, even though they're scholarships, they're not part of awarding through financial aid. They start with admissions. So based on the review of your student's academic record, they would have offered an academic award if they saw that that matched up. So any questions initially, or if you have students that will be coming up in future years, just keep that in mind, that that originates and kind of stays with admissions until it's finally been awarded to financial aid. With the Baylor need-based grant, that is based off the CSS profile. So when that is completed, and like I said, that's just once as a student comes into Baylor, that looks at the financial information in addition to the FAFSA to see what Baylor can offer as need-based aid. If you'll notice with those two awards, the academic and the Baylor needs-based, they also have different criteria a student needs to maintain in order to have those awards renewed. Need for the need-based grant, that financial need would need to be demonstrated each year. With the academic, obviously that merit component needs to be fulfilled. Something else with the academic is your student will need to be enrolled full-time as well. Something I frequently saw pop up this past fall, which reminded me, with that academic scholarship, perhaps your student may enroll in classes for them this spring, once they get started here later in the fall. And if they're on a wait list and they're not officially enrolled in 12 hours, that scholarship won't roll over yet until they hit that 12-hour mark. So just keep in mind the merit needs the 12 hours or more. With specialty and departmental awards, if you go to our scholarships page, you will see specialty awards. You'll see some that are affiliated to the Baptist denomination. If you go a little further and follow some of the pathways, you'll see some for leadership and other items. A majority of those, you'll need to double check the timing on them, because like I said, right now we're still kind of only at the stage of outside at this point in time. The others may have been awarded, but for future reference, go to that scholarships link, look at it, especially for departmental awards. Something to keep in mind with departmental awards is that As your student is here at Baylor, it's very important for obviously them to be engaged with their program, get to know their professors, build a rapport, because often with departmental awards, they will have the requirement of having a professor letter of recommendation. So it's great to have that to help your student be able to get some of those departmental awards. With the direct loans, just to kind of help reinforce it, because we are in that prime time of students trying to make sure they have their aid lined up, is just make sure if the loans have been accepted, subsidized or unsubsidized in the Bear Web account, make sure that entrance counseling and master promissory note have been completed at studentaid.gov. Side note, and I forgot to mention this earlier, if there are still any outstanding requirements, your loans, even if you've completed the entrance counseling and master promissory note, they won't get applied to the account until all requirements have been satisfied. So once again, go back to Bear Web, double check everything's good to go, make sure you've completed these, and the aid should work as it should. So with direct loans, with the unsubsidized, subsidized, and plus, because the Department of Education runs those, they do charge an origination fee. So you'll see that posted, and then the examples of what to kind of anticipate. So even though your student may have accepted, let's say, an unsubsidized loan for $5,000, it could end up being reduced slightly due to that origination fee that's taken out. So just this example was the $5,500 unsubsidized loan, and what actually will end up showing up on the bill, that $5,441. That comes out ahead of time. It's not a fee that you have to pay as a student or family. It will come out from that loan on top, and then it'll get split between your fall and spring and get applied. If you are needing more information about loans, that's a great link to start with. That's on there. It's a great starting point for both the direct loans, for the Parent Plus loan, which is part of that, and even any of the alternative loans. We do have a preferred lender list, and that's, once again, a great place to start. It'll have a snapshot of multiple lenders with their interest rates, so that way it'll help you kind of narrow that search down, because ultimately you have to find something that fits and works for your family and what they're comfortable with. So that's that. With an extra little note with subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus, since they are through the Department of Ed, pretty much anything you need to know about them will be at studentaid.gov. That's where they house those loans. That's where your loan servicer will be. So that's just your go-to link for that information. The interest rates for those federal loans are updated each summer, July 1st, and so here are the dates or rates that we have posted for you. You'll see with the sub and unsub loans that 4.99, and then the plus is a little higher than that at 7.54. So once again, studentaid.gov is your go-to place to look at those interest rates, to look at your loan servicer. I just want to reinforce, anything with your direct loans will be at that website. With scholarships. So you've got Baylor scholarships and then outside scholarships. If you use that link, off to the right-hand side, you should see a quick link that'll be for incoming undergraduate students. So if you'll follow that pathway, it'll have you do another click. That's where you'll see additional awards. A majority of them have been awarded at this point, but it's always worth looking at, always. And with the Baptist scholarships, those are still items you could pursue as well. You'll see those at the top of that scholarship page. Departmental, like I said, even though a lot of those are kind of reserved for upperclassmen, it will not hurt at all to get those on your radar now as an incoming freshman and start building those relationships, that rapport, so you will have those letters of recommendation when you're pursuing those later. The outside scholarships, though, you definitely want to look still within your community, your parents, employers, and then using the search engines that we have links for on that web page. It's just, it can be a little exhausting going through all those and applying, But the bright side is the more you write that essay to go with those, the better it's going to be, and hopefully you'll get some return on that eventually. With alternative loans, I mentioned previously that preferred lender list, and I just want to stress, really take the time, even though it can kind of feel like crunch time right now, to look at your options and look with those preferred lenders of what is the best match for your family and what you feel most comfortable with. So just keeping in mind if you're wanting the student to get that loan by themselves, or if this is a loan you're going to get as a parent for your student, just look at the different things that are kind of make each of those loans unique, so you know if you even want to go further with that process with a particular lender. And then of course the rates and terms vary, so you've got to pay attention to that. And then right now is really the prime time for that. Like I said, ideally beginning of June is when you want to do that, but obviously things can happen. Maybe you realize you do need to pursue a loan at this point. Go ahead and do it now. Realize that it may not get certified by July 31st, our financial due date, just because this is our peak time and the volume is very high with loans. So what you may want to look at is, if you do have that loan in process or you've started this weekend, is you may need to look at setting up a payment plan. That will help take care of getting the balance kind of, checked off. You've got that coming. And then when the loan does come through, that will get applied to your student's account balance. And depending on the amount you applied for, it may clear that balance in that payment plan, or it may take down that to an amount that then your payments will be readjusted for that. Work study. So like I mentioned earlier, it will show up in the award offer as an eligibility. So often parents and students will see that amount and assume that, let's say that $3,200 is going to be applied to the account balance. It is just an eligibility, so if your student accepts it, it just means that they have the ability to get a job on campus. If they do get a job on campus, then they would get paid every other week. And once they get those paychecks, which will be through direct deposit, it's up to them how they use that money. Ideally, they're saving some of that to help go towards future terms, or they're using that for expenses in the here and now, books, supplies, food, whatever it might be. But that is something to look at. Now often students may think, well, what's the benefit of doing federal work study as opposed to working off campus? Something to keep in mind is, with work study, you work a maximum of 20 hours. You don't have to work 20 hours, but that's your maximum. Because really they're wanting you to focus as being a student first and a student worker second. Sometimes, I don't know about you, but my personal experience of working off campus, that's not always the case. They didn't see me as a student first. So, with that said, it can also, if they end up getting a job within their program, their field of study, within an office or with a professor, that could help open up doors for other opportunities. Another component is on the FAFSA. When your student completes it for 23-24, and the student income section will ask if any of that income was earned through federal work study. That won't count against your student because it was a form of aid. So unlike if they had a job off campus, that income would count towards their aid eligibility. It's just a great item to look into. I would definitely encourage you and your student, especially with coming in their first year, is also think about working, if they want to pursue that, talk with the supervisor once they get hired about maybe kind of easing into the job, so they really get that balance of how to manage studies and work. We want them to utilize and really benefit from this type of aid, but also we don't want other aid to become in jeopardy because perhaps that's impacting and their grades fall. So just, part of that growing process of learning how to balance things. And so BearWeb, once again, a reminder, your go-to place, I would check it weekly, maybe even more than that, just to make sure you're on top of things. That's where you're going to see any outstanding aid requirements for financial aid, where you can view and accept award offers. It even has an academic component to look at, dropping, adding courses, looking at your grades, and then also meal plans can be checked through that as well. So bare web, bare web, bare web. Special circumstances, something we want to touch on, is when you were filling out that FAFSA and CSS, you probably remember having to pull information from 2 years ago, from 2020. A lot can change in 2 years for you financially. If that's your case, if your financial situation right now is not accurately reflecting what was demonstrated in 2020 on your financial forms, then look at this appeal, use this link, and see if this is perhaps something you and your family want to pursue. It will kind of provide you examples of what typically what could qualify for review. And with that, it's going to ask for documentation. They just want to be able to know what your situation is and have documentation to support that. So that's what you're going to look at if your family is in one of those situations. It's just something that you can check into. If it does get approved, you can potentially be given additional aid. So it's something to check out. So reminders and important dates. Definitely sign up with the listservs for outside scholarships. I would kind of add to this, if you haven't already, maybe create a separate email address. So when you get all those scholarship emails, they can go to that separate email. That'll kind of help you organize it, not flood your normal inbox, and that's just a go-to place to check on those items. October 1st of every year is when the aid applications will open up for the upcoming year. So this fall, October 1st, the 23-24 aid applications will open up. Remember what I said, CSS you're not going to have to complete again, just the FAFSA. Okay, so you won't have to go through all of that again, just the FAFSA. Once you submit that aid application, the FAFSA, that's when the processing team will once again review, see if any information needs to be verified. And so if it does, it'll get posted in your Bear Web account. Mid-February is where you'll see committee and departmental scholarships start to open up. It's worth checking into. You never know when new items will be added. And it's also where if it's not a time frame that your student is eligible for, at least it's on their radar so they know what to look for next year, the following year, to apply for. And then mid to late May is when typically that new award offer will come out. So once you get through this freshman year, towards the end of your spring semester, that's when you should have your award offer. Something to keep in mind, kind of touched on it earlier, if there are any outstanding requirements for financial aid, that award offer will not be posted at that time frame. You'll have to have those resolved in order for that award offer for 23-24 to be posted. And then early June is the target time frame to apply for loans for that upcoming academic year, like 23-24. So if possible, start that process then. And then of course your freshman through senior year is just don't give up on the outside scholarships. Just keep pursuing them. I wish I would have gotten the name of it, but we had a young man who reached out to one of my coworkers, a fellow counselor. He was so excited. He had been pursuing outside scholarships and he actually got one for $10,000. He called us last week to tell us. So don't give up. Keep doing it. And then don't hesitate to reach out to financial aid, both our financial aid counselors and One Stop. We'll do our best to help you out, check on things, see what's going on. And that last item is definitely something you're going to want to look into, our money management coaches. It's a new program through Student Financial Literacy. And so they have trained students, peers, on how to coach their fellow peers on managing money. This is a great transitional time for your students. I know you've probably done a lot with your own students, but it never hurts for them to maybe hear it from peers and from others. So how to get their finances in order, what to consider when they're pursuing student loans, whether it's now or potentially in their graduate studies, how to set up a student emergency fund, just how to kind of get their finances in order as they're out on their own. A link to look for that is that baylor.edu/SFL. That will allow your student obviously to see additional information and resources related to financial literacy, but also to schedule a visit, an appointment. I would just encourage your student to do that sometime, hopefully this fall, but definitely this freshman year, just to kind of get up on that start and just get that guidance. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
Thank you, Amy. Amy covered a ton of information there. As she mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, all of these slides are in the guidebook orientation app, so you can go there if you need to see any of this information that she already covered, that I'm about to cover. Also, Google is your friend. If you have questions about Baylor financial aid, scholarships, the e-bill system, if you Google Baylor and e-bill or Baylor and outside scholarships, it'll take you right to the web page that you're looking for that'll have good information for you. And before we jump into the student accounts, I do want to back up real quick and just talk about this money management coaching offerings, because this is a wonderful opportunity to learn about personal finance. My parents gave me a phenomenal foundation teaching me not to spend more than I make, which is a great place to start, but I didn't learn about compound interest until I did a class like this where you talk about personal finance. So we really recommend students look into this personal finance coaching right at the beginning of their college career to help them minimize debt and also to plan for, once they do get out of college and they've got that job, how to most effectively use their finances. All right, now for this part of the presentation, we're going to cover billing and due dates. Baylor partners with a couple outside organizations, and we're going to talk about the guaranteed tuition option and tuition insurance. Both of those are nice options in regards to finances. We'll talk about how to pay the bill as well as payment plans if you would like to spread out those payments. Finally, we'll talk about the e-bill system. Okay, when you get your bill at the beginning of each term, you will have two ways to pay for it. You can either pay for it in full, or you can spread it out in a payment plan. But you have to do one of those two things in order to satisfy the financial obligation. If you don't satisfy the financial obligation, you could be subject to late fees, or even worse, registration and transcript holds when you get to prepare for the next semester with the registration holds, or eventually when you need a transcript to submit to a prospective employer, you have to be current with your Baylor bill in order to get that transcript and to register for the next term. Billing and due dates. Monthly statements will be available on the first day of each month, so any charges that were incurred in the previous month will be charged to you on the first of the following month, and they are due on the last day of that month. This slide mentions authorized users. Students, if you have anybody that you want to help you pay the bill, or you want them to be able to discuss your financial situation with Baylor, you need to set them up as an authorized user because the federal government protects your financial information at Baylor. Guaranteed tuition option. This is a nice option if you want to know for sure how much you're going to be paying for tuition for the next 4 years. This year's tuition rate for the fall and the spring semester combined is going to be $51,738. Each year moving forward, that amount will probably increase. There's no guarantee in regards to that. It will probably increase. If you would like to lock in a tuition rate, you can sign up for the guaranteed tuition option, and you would pay $54,462 this year, and then the 3 subsequent years. So the program is not designed to save you money. It usually breaks about even, but what it does is you lock in a tuition rate so that there's no uncertainty about how much tuition is going to be for you for the next 4 years. Again, please check out this website. It'll show you the previous 10 years so that you can get an idea of what tuition increases look like and if this is going to be a good option for you. Tuition insurance. This is another nice option, especially since we've all experienced a global pandemic recently. What this will do for you is this will help cover any tuition and housing and meal plan expenses that you incurred at Baylor if you or your student has to withdraw from Baylor due to a covered medical condition, including COVID. Basically, it is, you can see on that chart there that if you, depending on when you withdraw from the university would give you a refund, and then the tuition insurance would cover anything that is not refunded to you. I think you would get $10,000 of coverage for about $100. So it's pretty reasonable. But that, again, if you have questions about that, you can check our website, or you can just Google Baylor tuition insurance, and it'll take you to this one. All right, your semester bill, when you log into the e-bill system and you pull up the bill, you're going to see a summary of your account. You'll see the due date, the amount due, you'll see the summary of any new payments or credits, new charges, and financial aid. So that's going to be at the top. You will be able to see the breakdown of the detail of those charges further down into the e-bill system. But the way that you pay for that is we've got several options. One, if you're going to pay, we recommend that you do it through the e-bill system electronically. You can connect your checking or savings account and pay directly to Baylor. This is free. You will see it on the student account immediately, so there's no delay like if you were to mail us a check. You can pay via credit card. There is a 2.85% convenience fee, and so depending on how much you're paying Baylor, that's an awful lot of convenience fee for some airline miles or whatever points you get. You can mail us a check, but if you mail us a check, we have to receive that check by the due date, by the last day of the month, in order to avoid late fees. It's not enough to postmark it by that date. You can pay in person at our office with a check. You may not pay in person with cash anymore. We've stopped that. It just wasn't safe for students or parents to bring large amounts of cash. And then finally, if you have to make an international payment, you can pay through Western Union in the e-bill system. We also partner with Flywire, which is another servicer. Both are excellent, and you can track that payment right from when you initiate it in the Flywire system or in the e-bill system, and you can track it all the way through until it hits your student account. So if you have international payments, we highly recommend Western Union or Flywire. If you would like to utilize a payment plan and spread the cost of the semester out over the term, we've got two options. Both of them have a setup fee. The standard payment plan, you would pay a $60 setup fee, and then you have 5 payments that are each 20% of the bill. If you want the deferred payment plan, you'd pay $80 to set that up, and then your subsequent payments would each be 25% of the bill. The standard payment plan due date is July 31st. The deferred payment plan has to be set up by July 31st, but that first 25% of the bill is not due until August 31st. Again, the website explains it more thoroughly and with more detail, so I recommend you check that out at baylor.edu/ebill or baylor.edu/payment plan. All right, Baylor's e-bill system, I recommend you get into the e-bill system soon, especially if you have not yet. But it is very intuitive for the most part. Occasionally there may be something that you'll want to touch base with us on, but it's really straightforward. Students will obviously use the student login. Authorized users will use their own login. We'll talk a little bit more about authorized users. They will have their own password, authorized users. You'll have your own password. And then this is what the e-bill system looks like once you have logged in. I want to draw your attention to the red circles. That is where you will find the statements, your monthly statements. And so if you need a monthly statement for like an outside scholarship donor, sometimes they want a statement, or maybe your 529 plan is going to want a statement. You can get those statements in the e-bill system if you click on those links right there. If you want to enroll in a payment plan, again, right from the home screen, we've got a link to enroll in a payment plan. This is what the payment plan enrollment screen is going to look like. On the left-hand side, you're going to see all of your financial aid, the charges, any current payments, and any loans. On the right-hand side, you're going to see the payment schedule. And you want to make sure that you look all the way down in the bottom right-hand corner to see the amount that is due when you set up the plan. So when you set up the plan, it's not just the payment plan setup fee, but you would want to make sure that you would see that for the standard payment plan is going to include 20% of that first payment. So make sure you're looking all the way bottom right of the screen, just so there are no surprises. Want to talk a little bit about outside awards. So if you have money coming to Baylor from another source, let's say a scholarship donor or a 529 plan or a state prepaid plan, outside awards is going to be the part of the student accounts office that you'll be interacting with. So for state prepaid plans like the Texas Guaranteed Tuition Plan, which is also known as Texas Tomorrow, what outside awards needs from you is they're going to need your account number and your student ID number and your name, and then at the appropriate time during the term, they will invoice TGTP on your behalf. But up until that time, once you submit your account number and your name, they are going to put an anticipated payment on your student account so that it is taken into account and you're not having to pay it up front and be reimbursed by TGTP. That'll be the same as other state prepaid plans. Common ones here at Baylor would be Florida Prepaid or College Illinois. But any of those state prepaid plans, you would send your information to outside_awards. Now 529 plans are going to be different. 529 plans, Baylor will only post those payments to your account. Baylor is not involved in initiating those payments. So typically what you're going to do is you will go to your 529 plans webpage, you will say send Baylor University a designated amount of money that you will select, and that's how you initiate that payment. Finally, if you're using VA benefits, you will want to initiate that process with the VA benefits office at Baylor. Let them know that you're receiving VA benefits. They're going to need some paperwork from you to initiate that process. And then eventually those benefits, depending on what type they are, will show up as an anticipated payment on your student account, similar to a state prepaid plan or an outside scholarship. Now, if you have an outside scholarship, please report it for Baylor's outside scholarship report form. What this will do for you is it will get that outside scholarship added to your financial aid package, which is required, and it will also place an anticipated payment on your student account for that outside scholarship. A lot of times your scholarship donors are going to want to send the money straight to Baylor while Baylor is waiting for that payment. Once you report that outside scholarship, you will have an anticipated payment on your account for that outside scholarship. You want to make sure that the scholarship donor is going to include your Baylor ID number and that they mail the payment to the correct address, which you can see there on the screen. Again, it's in the guidebook app and on the website. And just be aware that if you're receiving aid up to your cost of attendance and you get an outside scholarship maybe late in the process, when that outside scholarship is added to your financial aid package, it could adjust your package because you are not able to receive more than your cost of attendance in. Credit refunds. If you have a credit refund in your account, Baylor is going to refund that to you. We do not hold credits and roll them to future terms. And so what you'll need to do is you'll need to sign up for direct deposit in the e-bill system. We are actually transitioning this system right now, this month. And so if you had students, former students at Baylor, or you have students who are further along in their education career at Baylor, they would need to sign up for their refunds in BearWeb. This new process, students and authorized users will sign up for refunds in the e-bill system, which is more user-friendly and more intuitive. But again, we won't hold any kind of account credit. We'll refund it by the end of the semester, and the best way to do that is through the e-bill system. And so in the e-bill system, there is a tab for refunds, and you can go in there and you can enter your account information. And finally, here is some contact information. If you need to reach out to us, please do so. Don't hesitate. We want to help. We understand that your Baylor bill is definitely going to be more complicated than something like bundling your home and auto with Progressive. If you're staying on campus and you have a meal plan and you have tuition and you have a parking permit, those are going to be 4 different departments within Baylor that are going to be putting charges on your Baylor bill. And so it is a little bit more complicated, and so if you have questions, please reach out to us. We've got a few more resources again that are in this presentation and on the website. We've got the One Stop that Amy mentioned, studentaid.gov, Baylor.edu/SFL, Student Financial Literacy. So there's one last plug for those financial coaches we want to encourage you to meet with. And then student employment. If you are interested in more information on student employment, there is a booth set up across the hall where you can go and you can get some more information on work study. And finally, I want to leave you with a verse from Scripture because the financial discussion here at Baylor can be heavy and it can feel overwhelming sometimes. But Baylor is a Christian university, and so we get to remember that our hope is ultimately in God and on His Word. And so from Jeremiah 29:11, the Bible tells us that God knows the plans that He has for us, plans to prosper us, not to harm us, plans to give us a hope and a future. So thank you so much for joining us for this presentation. If you do have questions, you're welcome to come down and we can answer those. We probably can't do student-specific questions about your accounts since we don't have access to all of that, but general questions. If you have questions about financial aid, please come to this side of the auditorium. Questions about student accounts, please come to this side. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day at Baylor, and don't forget to pick up a Dr. Pepper float just outside.